Hello everyone, I'm Ankit and you're watching StudyIQ IS English. In our today's video, we'll try to understand why is Article 342 of the Indian Constitution in news presently. And the reason behind this is very simple. As you can understand, the population census exercise is being held across the country, but in the state of Jharkhand, a demand began circulating among the Adivasi communities. Here, the demand was made that in case the enumerator comes and asks you about your religious identity, do not mention the word Hindu. Rather, in place of that, use the word Sarna, which identifies as traditional tribal faith, or use the word others. Similarly, a week later, a large gathering of Adivasi people was held in New Delhi. And there a demand began circulating that why don't you delist those people who have converted to Christianity or Islam and move them away from the scheduled tribe category. Now, these two demands are at the center of a long debate. This long debate actually persists to the fact whether religious identity of a person is a core demand of you becoming a tribal or not, right? So we'll discuss that particular issue in our today's video. Now, before we move forward, you need to understand the notes which I will be using for our today's session. You can also download them by going to a particular Telegram channel called as ETS Live. And while you're at it, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel also. So let us try to first understand who is a scheduled tribe in India. Now, the mention of scheduled tribe in the Indian Constitution, it is mentioned in the Article 342 of the Constitution. This article says that the president has the power, after consultation with the governor of a particular state, to specify through a public notification which tribes or which tribal community shall be designated or deemed as a scheduled tribe in India. And this list, for the first time when it is notified by the president, would be limited to a particular state and union territory. So, who has the power to notify a tribe as a scheduled tribe? It is the President of India, but only for the first time. After that list has been notified, in order to modify that list, in order to bring new communities into the list or take existing communities out of that list, that power is vested with the Parliament of India. So, the Parliament of India has an exclusive power to exclude or include any community from the list which has been first notified by the president through a legislation passed in the Indian Parliament. So this is what the Constitution says, that in order to be categorized as a scheduled tribe, that list needs to be first issued by the president and can be modified only by the parliament, and only those communities present in the list can be called as a scheduled tribe community, right? Now, what you have to understand here, there are some nitty-gritties behind it. Now, first, the criteria for who should be recognized as a scheduled tribe, that criteria is not explicitly mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. So, how would you identify a community X or a community Y is a scheduled tribe or not? So, this particular responsibility went through multiple expert committees, and the recommendations of these committees have fixed certain criteria based on which we can identify a community qualifies of being a scheduled tribe or not. You need to understand this absence of an explicit criteria is what is behind this debate, because this criteria nowhere mentions religion as one of the criteria to identify a scheduled tribe community. Now, the most important committee in this regard becomes the Lokur committee, whose recommendations came in 1965. It gave 5 criteria based on which you can identify a particular community qualifies of being an ST or not. It includes indications of primitive trait, having a distinctive culture, they are living in geographically isolated from the rest of the communities, they are shy when it comes to contact with the community at large, and most importantly, they are exhibiting backwardness in their conduct. So these are the 5 criteria based on which any community can be designated as a scheduled tribe or not. What you need to understand, these criteria as indicated by the Lokur committee are based on anthropological or socio-economic grounds. There is no theological or there is no religious based ground to identify any community and as an ST community. And this directly is in opposite to an Article 341 of the Indian Constitution. If you look at Article 341 of the Indian Constitution, it gives the power to the president to notify communities in the scheduled caste, and similarly that list further can be modified only by the parliament, much in similar manner to the Article 342. So what is the difference between Article 341, which identifies SC, and Article 342, which identifies scheduled tribe? Let us understand this. You have to understand, by the Supreme Court presidential order of the 1950, the scheduled caste presidential order of the 1950, it explicitly conditions the scheduled caste status based on religion. This criteria, as evolved by the government, has stated that the people belonging to Hindu religions, which was later extended to Sikhs and Buddhists, only they can be categorized as scheduled caste. It never has included any person who is Christian or Muslim to be qualifying as a scheduled caste community. And the Supreme Court this year itself has upheld this particular distinction. Supreme Court stated that if a Dalit person who normally is categorized into a scheduled caste community, if they get converted into Christianity or Islam, they will not continue to be able to have a scheduled caste status. So this has been what has been qualified or clarified by the Supreme Court multiple times, including this year, that only those people who belong to Hindu, Sikh or Buddhist religion, they can claim protection under Article 341 of the Constitution. And this very distinction between Article 341 and 342 is what is the basis of delisting of certain communities from the scheduled tribe status. So let us try to understand what the word delisting actually means. Now, the word delisting actually refers to the demand that tribal people, when they convert into religions of Christianity or Islam, they do not continue, or they should not continue to receive the benefits meant for scheduled tribe people. And among the major voices who have raised these demands are people who belong to scheduled tribe community and follow Hindu religion. Now you have to understand, this demand that has emerged basically seeks to import the scheduled caste religious criteria and implement them in the scheduled tribes framework. But you need to understand, if you have to implement them, first you have to make a constitutional amendment, or you have to overturn certain judicial precedent which has been fixed by the High Courts and Supreme Court earlier on. So in this regard, let us understand what is the root of this demand of delisting certain communities from the scheduled tribe status after conversion into Christianity and Islam. Now, the roots of this delisting often track to a politician who is a very famous Adivasi leader called as Mr. Kartik Oraon. Mr. Kartik Oraon, he later became a union minister in the cabinet of Mrs. Indira Gandhi when she was the prime minister. Now, in 1962, he contested the election from the Lohardaga constituency, who at that time was an ST reserved constituency. But to your surprise, Mr. Kartik Oraon lost the election. So, he contested this lost election in the High Court of Patna. He stated that his opponents, who were also tribals, because this was a tribal reserved seat, they did not qualify to become a tribal on the ground that they themselves had converted into Christianity, and therefore they did not continue to remain the member of Oraon committee, and therefore their election should be disqualified based on the ground that they had lost their ST status after the conversion. So let us now take a look at what the Patna High Court actually qualified or clarified. The Patna High Court stated that the identity of you being a tribal, particularly of that of Oraon committee, is a tribal identity based on ethnic kinship, these criteria, right? So you changing your religion does not mean that you lose your ST status, because according to the Supreme Court, Christian Oraons, they retained their clan system and they continue to observe those tribal customs and festivals which even the normal Oraons actually participated. So SC noted, the Supreme Court here, they actually noted that your identity becomes your tribal identity first and a religious identity comes later. And this is the ground that many people actually defend, that after conversion into Christianity or Islam, first of all, based on constitutional distinction between Article 341 and Article 342, prohibits losing of ST status after conversion, and second, the precedents created by the Patna High Court, since it has not been negated by the Supreme Court of India, is the ground that you cannot delink or deregister any person from the benefits of ST. So in this regard, let us take a look what are the arguments made by many people in order to support this idea of delisting of certain communities. The first criteria based on which many people have demanded for delisting is consistency with the Scheduled Caste Order of 1950. You need to understand this Scheduled Caste Order of 1950 basically provides caste-based affirmative action policies like the reservation on the ground that the caste-based discrimination, which is very key in Hindu Varna system, actually originated from it. So it is the the social structure which is regulated by a religion actually determines whether you face caste-based discrimination system in India or not, right? And people, when they convert into another religion, the religious-based social structure that actually discriminated against you no longer applies to those people who have converted into their religion. Because why? On the first hand, reservation is provided. Reservation is first provided to those people who have been discriminated against their own community. So, when the community discriminates against you, the state tries to provide you positive discrimination. And this positive discrimination can be seen in form of reservation. So, in absence of community backing, the state is providing you with their backing. So, this is the idea behind reservation. But on the other hand, if you convert yourself into Christianity or Islam, these religions have their own internal welfare structure which are very central to the religious system. So in that case, you are not being discriminated upon, and it is the welfare system of these religion which is providing you positive support, and in that case you no longer require the support of the state system. So this is the ground based on which people who have converted into other religions have been denied the SC based criteria or the scheduled caste based identity, and the same can also be applied to people who belong to scheduled tribes. So this is the first argument. The second argument is the resource diversion argument, and this was given by Mr. Karthik Oraon himself. He stated that the benefits given to the tribal communities are very limited. So the people who have converted to other religion, if they take these benefits, it would leave out less amount of benefits to the people who belong to Hindu religion. So this is the second criteria, that if you take away the limited benefits, it leaves out very less amount of benefits to the people who are left, and actually who are the ones who are the most marginalized in the system. Now, let us try to understand what is the third criteria. Third criteria is the basic idea of what makes you a tribal community. If you look at the local community criteria, it stated that in order to be classified as a tribal, you need to have a distinctive culture. You need to exhibit primitive traits. So these are very central to your tribal identity. But in case if you convert yourself to other religions, you are no longer practicing those practices which makes you a tribal person. That is the animist practices, participating in community festivals, showing community rights. So these are the practices which makes you tribal. But if you convert yourself, you do not practice those practices, and therefore you are no longer eligible to base or demand certain criteria which are exclusively meant for people belonging to the scheduled tribes. So these are the three criteria based on which many people have demanded that you need to delist those people who have converted in order to not provide them with the scheduled tribe status or the benefits, right? So this was our today's discussion. Now, before we move forward and solve a question that has appeared in UPSC 2024 based on the exact discussion that we had today, you need to understand the topic we dealt with, Article 342 and Article 341. These are very important as far as Article 15 of the Constitution. Article 15 and 16, these are basically right to equality, but it also provides an exception to the state that they can positively discriminate against those people or towards those people who face certain discrimination from their own society, right? So these are the basis based on which the reservation policies of the state have been determined. So, to understand Indian polity in detail, you can take admissions to a P2I foundation batches. In these batches, which are offered separately for 2027 and 2028, you can take admissions to them by going to a website. But before making the payment, if you apply this code ATS Live, you are going to get maximum discounts on all the courses, right? Now, before we end up our today's discussion, this is the question that I want you to solve. This is from 2024. There are two statements given, can be easily solved. After our today's discussion, you need to identify correct answers in this particular question. Okay, so do let me know the correct answer in the comment section, and the ones who get it right would get a thumbs up from my side, right? And the notes which I've used today, you can download them by going to this particular Telegram channel called as ATS Live. So this is all from my side for today. Please have a very good day. We'll see you again tomorrow.